Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'du fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. By the grace and mercy of Allah the Almighty, we've been discussing about the life and the Seerah of Syedna Imam Mahdi, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadiani alayhi salatu wassalam. And we had covered all the way till the year 1884. Today I want to mention from where we had left off in the previous lecture, which is all the way towards the end of 1884. A couple of things were, I couldn't mention them in the last lecture, so I'll start off from there. One of the things that took place during the time of Ahmadiyya, the first 4 volumes, is in the year 1883. The older brother of Hazrat Musleh Maud alayhi salatu wassalam, Mirza Ghulam Sahib, he passed away. He passed away at the age of 55, and the cause of his passing was that 2 years prior there was a case filed by some of the distant relatives claiming that they have ownership rights on some of the properties of this Khandan. And Promised Messiah had prayed about this, and he was informed by Allah the Almighty that, your family is going to lose this case. Ujibu kulla du'aika illa fi shurakaika was the revelation that he had received. I mentioned this before. When the brother of Promised Messiah didn't listen to his advice and went ahead anyways and lost the case, he took a pretty hard hit, and he was so much grief-stricken that when he first received the word that he has lost the case, he fell unconscious. And then eventually 2 years later, he was sick all throughout, and then 2 years later in 1883 he died. When he passed away, the day he was to pass away, Promised Messiah received a revelation in the morning saying janaza, meaning funeral. And then in the same evening, by 7 p.m., his brother passed away. Then by the way, when Mirza Ghulam Sahib passed away, his widow, the same Bhabi who had been an antagonist thus far in the life of Promised Messiah Islam, now understood that as far as legality is concerned, Promised Messiah Islam is now the sole owner of all the property of this Khandan. The same man that she used to oppose, so much so that at times wouldn't even send food. And if someone would, serve food to Promised Messiah, she would take personal offense. So she, now knowing that the property has passed on to Hazrat Musleh Maud, she wrote to him, requested him, if 50% of the property of this Khandan could be written off to Mirza Sultan Ahmad Sahib, who was the eldest son of the Promised Messiah Islam, but in a way was adopted by Mirza Ghulam Sahib and his wife, since they had no child of their own. Hazrat Musleh Maud Islam readily agreed and handed over the 50% ownership of that property to Sahibzada Mirza Sultan Ahmad Sahib on the request of his Babi. And for the remaining 50%, different members of his Khandan, they laid claim on the ownership, and Promised Messiah Islam wasn't one for fighting over these worldly issues. So he didn't really go after these people to claim the remaining 50% for himself. Then comes the year 1884, in which Hazrat Musleh Maud Islam had to undertake a journey to Ludhiana. And this is post Ahmadiyya era. So now his name has become famous. So when Hazur went to Ludhiana, many people wanted to come and see him. They came in throngs and wanted to just do his ziyarat and whatnot and touch him, just receive those blessings through him. And so Promised Messiah Islam stayed in Ludhiana for some time. He did multiple tours of different cities, Ludhiana being one of them. So Hazur ﷺ would lead Fajr prayer himself wherever he was staying. But other prayers he would ask somebody else to lead. Some non-MDs raised this allegation that Syedna Musleh Maud would tell others to lead prayer. If he was the Nabi, how come he didn't lead the prayers? So first and foremost, there is no condition that a Nabi must always, in every single situation, has to lead the prayers. There are situations, there were times when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam appointed Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu to lead prayers instead. So in this case, we see Hazrat Aqdas Masih Maud did lead prayers, but oftentimes he would ask other people to lead the prayers. So no one can take this as an allegation and say, well, Promised Messiah never led the prayers. He did. During these years, some heavenly signs were also manifested. Some signs which were manifested in the books of Hadith, and I've already mentioned them in lecture 1 of this series. So anyone who is listening to this this episode or this lecture, if you haven't watched the first lecture of the series, it's available on YouTube and you can watch it from there. Now, at the end of 1884, by this time, Prophet Messiah ﷺ had received quite a few kushuf and ilham pointing towards his second marriage. He was already married, but practically he was living away from his first wife for a good 20 to 25 years. The reason of that, inshallah ta'ala, I'll mention momentarily in a few minutes actually. So Allah Ta'ala was informing him that Allah Ta'ala is going to bless you with a pious child. So in 1881, during Brahine era, Hazur received this revelation, Inna nubashiruka bi ghulamin hasinin, that surely we give you glad tidings of a beautiful boy. Promised Messiah ﷺ around this time frame was roughly close to 50 years of age, and he was not, he was not living with his first wife. They've been living separately for a good 20 to 25 years. And then Allah Ta'ala was also telling him, Uskur ne'mati ra'ita khadijati, that, remember my blessing. You will be receiving my Khadija. So Allah Ta'ala was telling him that a wife who will be similar in akhlaq as Hazrat Khadija radhiyallahu ta'ala anha is going to come into the blessed nikah of Syedna Ahmad alayhi salatu wasalam. So then in 1884, the father of Hazrat Amajan, Mir Nasir Nawab Sahib, had written to the Promised Messiah to pray for this matter, that he has been looking for a pious son-in-law for his daughter. He wanted to get his daughter married, so he said, pray that Allah Ta'ala, bless us. And Promised Messiah had already received revelations in which he was also informed that his second marriage is going to take place among a very pious, noble khandan of Sadat. Sadat are the progeny of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So much so that even the Delhi as a city of this khandan was mentioned. And lo and behold, this family was also from among the Sadat, very well known, and were from Delhi. So Promised Messiah ﷺ took this as a sign from Allah the Almighty. So when Mir Nasir Nawab Sahib wrote to him, Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ responded back to him saying, Allah Ta'ala has informed me of this matter for some time. And now I am officially writing to you, since you have asked me. I'm writing to you if you would be willing to consider me as a potential rishta for your daughter. And Hazur said, pray on it and don't make haste in rejecting this rishta. Take your time. So Mir Nasir Nawab Sahib, when he received this letter, thinking over some of the things which were in front of him, he put the letter aside. Because his daughter was 17, 18 years of age. Promised Messiah was almost 50. Almost 50. So huge age gap. A good age gap of 30 plus years or so. Plus, Delhi was known as the center of tehzeeb, of language, of culture. Punjab was known as 180 degrees opposite of what Delhi stood for. So there was cultural gap as well as language gap in a way. The age gap was there too. So looking at all these things, Mir Nasir Nawab Sahib just put the letter aside, didn't really do much about it. He didn't really inform his wife. All the while, his family kept looking for a rishta for his daughter, and Mir Nasir Nawab Sahib was traveling from one city to another for work. Eventually, when he made it back to Delhi, he had a conversation with his wife, and for any rishta that would come, she would find certain nooks, certain shortcomings in them, and she wouldn't say yes to any rishta. Upon which Mir Sahib said, if you keep rejecting every rishta, then our daughter will eventually become so old that she would be not of marriageable age. Is that what you want? Upon which the mother of Hazrat Amma Jan responded saying, in rishton se behtar to Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib ka, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib hai, that it is better to then marry our daughter to Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. At some point, she had also considered Hazrat Masih Maud for rishta, but didn't really consider it in a serious way. And me, Nasir Nawab Sahib had not mentioned it to her, that Promised Messiah had written for this rishta. When she made this statement, right away Mir Sahib, who had the letter with him, put it in front of his wife and said, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib had also written for this rishta. And readily she said, if that is the case, then you can write back to Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib that we are in agreement for this rishta. Eventually, a date was set, which was 26th of November 1884. I believe it was in the month of, I'm not sure what exactly month it was in terms of Islamic calendar, but the date was 26th of November, and Promised Messiah, it was supposed to be Sunday. Promised Messiah said, make it Monday. So 27th of November 1884 is when this nikah was to take place. Promised Messiah, along with a couple of friends of his from Qadiani, went to Delhi, and in a very simple way, this nikah took place. The entire Khandan of Masih Maud was against this marriage. The entire Khandan of Hazrat Amma Jan was also against this marriage. The only people who were in favor of this marriage was her immediate family. Her parents, siblings were younger than her anyways. All the other relatives, the grandparents and whoever, they were against this marriage because number one, they were against the age difference, and number two, they were against them marrying Hazrat Amma Jan to someone who was a Punjabi, right? So they had these issues due to which they did not want, and for some reason, among the relatives of Hazrat Amma Jan, they were also of the opinion that certain rasumat need to take place, such as the Promised Messiah should come and bring some jewelry and some clothes for this marriage. And Promised Messiah did no such thing. It was a very, very simple wedding. The marriage was, the nikah was performed by Maulvi Sayyid Nazir Sahib in the Maulvi Sayyid Nazir Hussain Sahib in the masjid of Khwaja Mir Dard in Delhi after Asr prayer. So between Asr and Maghrib prayer, the nikah was performed, and the haq mahar for this nikah was 1100 rupees according to that time, which was a substantial amount. From this marriage, Allah Ta'ala blessed Promised Messiah with 10 children. 5 boys, 5 girls, but only 3 boys and 2 girls lived up to a long age. 5 other children passed away in their infancy. But the unique thing is, before the birth of every single child of his from this marriage, Allah Ta'ala revealed to him through ilham, through kashaf, through wahi, that a child is about to be born. And certain matters related to the child who was to be born were also revealed in those revelations. Up until this point, Promised Messiah ﷺ in one place has stated that he received close to 5,000 visions. Up until this point in his life, he had received up to 5,000 visions, kashaf. But barely 100 or so kushuf are mentioned by this point in Tazkara. So even Tazkara, we know for a fact, did not cover every single vision or even revelation or dream that Hazrat Aqdas Masih Maud was given by Allah the Almighty. It captures a significant amount, but still a big chunk is because Promised Messiah did not put out every single thing that he would see in the form of vision in front of everyone. Until unless, of course, Allah Ta'ala was commanding him, okay, now this is, share this, so on and so forth. So, regarding this blessed marriage, even Holy Prophet ﷺ had mentioned it. In one of the hadiths, it is mentioned regarding the advent of Imam Mahdi and the Promised Messiah. Rasulullah ﷺ said, يَتَزَوَّجُ وَيُولَدُ لَهُ, that when the Promised Messiah, the Imam Mahdi, will come, يَتَزَوَّجُ, he will get married. وَيُولَدُ لَهُ, and he will be blessed with children. People get married and people have children anyways. there is no need to mention it. But the fact that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned him having children from this marriage meant that these children were going to be special, that these were going to be blessed, mubarak bache honge. And amongst these children was, of course, one who was destined to become Musleh Maud. Inshallah ta'ala, I'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, one question that comes up in people's mind is, what happened to Promised Messiah's first wife? Why were they not living together for good 20-25 years or so? So, in this regard, there is a narration by Hazrat Amma Jan, al-Mu'mineen radiyallahu ta'ala anha, the second wife of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu, so I'll present that. حضرت المومنین کا بیان ہے کہ حضرت مسیح موعود علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام کو اوائل ہی سے پہلی بیوی سے بے تعلقی سی تھی، جس کی وجہ یہ تھی کہ حضور کے رشتہ داروں کو دین سے سخت بے رغبتی تھی، اور ان کا میلان یعنی پہلی بیوی کا میلان ان رشتہ داروں کی طرف تھا، اور وہ اسی رنگ میں رنگین تھی، اس لیے آپ نے ان سے خصوصی تعلقات ترک کر دیے تھے۔ ہاں، حسن معاشرت میں آپ نے کبھی فرق نہیں آنے دیا اور انہیں اخراجات وغیرہ باقاعدہ دیا کرتے تھے۔ نکاح ثانی کے بعد حضرت اقدس نے انہیں کہلا بھیجا، اب میں نے دوسری شادی کر لی ہے، اب اگر دونوں بیویوں میں برابری نہیں رکھوں گا تو میں گنہگار ہوں گا، اس لیے اب دو باتیں ہیں، یا تو تم مجھ سے طلاق لے لو اور یا مجھے اپنے حقوق چھوڑ دو، میں تم کو خرچ دیے جاؤں گا۔ انہوں نے کہلا بھیجا کہ اب میں بڑھاپے میں کیا طلاق لوں گی، بس مجھے خرچ ملتا رہے، میں اپنے باقی حقوق چھوڑتی ہوں۔ چنانچہ حضرت اقدس نے ان کی یہ خواہش منظور فرما لی، اور وسط 1891 تک انہیں برابر خرچ ملتا رہا، لیکن بعد کو جب وہ اپنے بے دین رشتہ داروں کے ساتھ حضور کی مخالفت میں کھلم کھلا شامل ہو گئیں تو حضور نے محض دینی غیرت کے تحت ان کو طلاق دے دی۔ طلاق دینے سے پہلے حضور نے 2 مئی 1891 کو اپنے ایک اشتہار میں انہیں مخالفانہ سرگرمیوں سے دستکش ہونے کی ہدایت فرماتے ہوئے آخری بار انتباہ بھی کیا، لیکن انہوں نے کچھ پرواہ نہیں کی۔ تب مجبوراً حضرت اقدس کو بھی ان سے کلیتاً قطع تعلق کا فیصلہ کرنا پڑا۔ حضور نے طلاق کے بعد بھی خدمت خلق کے اسلامی تقاضوں کے مطابق انہیں اپنی نوازشوں سے محروم نہیں رکھا، بلکہ گاہے گاہے ضرورت کے وقت حضرت المومنین کے توسط سے انہیں امداد بھی دیتے رہے۔ چنانچہ حضرت المومنین ہی کی روایت ہے کہ ایک دفعہ مرزا سلطان احمد کی والدہ بیمار ہوئیں تو چونکہ حضرت صاحب کی طرف سے مجھے اجازت تھی، میں انہیں دیکھنے کے لیے گئی۔ واپس آ کر میں نے حضرت صاحب سے ذکر کیا کہ یہ تکلیف ہے، آپ خاموش رہے۔ میں نے دوسری دفعہ کہا تو فرمایا، میں تمہیں 2 گولیاں دیتا ہوں، یہ دے آؤ، مگر اپنی طرف سے دینا، میرا نام نہ لینا۔ اور بھی بعض اوقات حضرت صاحب نے اشارتاً کنایتاً مجھ پر ظاہر کیا کہ میں ایسے طریق پر کہ حضرت صاحب کا نام درمیان میں نہ آئے اپنی طرف سے کبھی کچھ مدد کر دیا کروں، سو میں کر دیا کرتی تھی۔ This question comes up regarding the first wife of the Promised Messiah Islam, as to why the Promised Messiah Islam and his first wife were living separately away from each other for good 20-25 years until Promised Messiah eventually decided to get married the second time. So in this regard, I have presented this narration from his second wife, Hazrat al-Mu'mineen radiyallahu ta'ala anha. The summary of which is that the first wife, since the very beginning, was inclined towards her side of the family. And her side of the family was very much inclined towards materialistic dunya rather than towards religion itself. And many people from among this side of the family were actually atheists and hardcore atheists. So much so that they would abuse Islam and Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So because her inclination was with such relatives, Promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam kept a distance from her as well. And for the longest time this was the case, until when Promised Messiah got married to Hazrat Amma Jan, he then wrote to his first wife and said that now that I have married second time, if I am not just in my treatment of both of my wives, I will be considered a sinner in the court of Allah Ta'ala. So now there are 2 options. Number 1, you can take divorce from me and that would be the end of things. Or number 2, I'll keep on financially supporting you, but then you can write in my favor that I do not have to associate with you as a husband anymore. Meaning the responsibilities of a husband, I don't have to take care of them anymore. Marital responsibilities. She said, I'm perfectly fine with that. You don't have to spend any time with me. So Promised Messiah ﷺ did that and financially supported her. And this support went all the way till 1891 until something happened, which inshallah we'll cover when we come to that point. And she openly sided with her side of the family against Musleh Maud ﷺ, and not just sided with them, but sort of went against Promised Messiah ﷺ. And at that point, Promised Messiah first wrote to her that don't do this, or I would be left with no other choice but to give you divorce. And she did not stop. She persisted in her mukhalafat, upon which then Hazrat Musleh Maud al-Islam officially ended the marriage by divorcing her. But even the divorce itself did not stop Promised Messiah to care for his first wife. But the way he would then care for her is from time to time, Hazrat Ammajan would go and inquire if the first wife needed anything, or if she was okay. And whenever she needed anything or she was sick, she would come and inform, meaning Hazrat Ammajan would inform Promised Messiah al-Islam, and Promised Messiah al-Islam would send medication or financial assistance or whatever through Hazrat Ammajan, telling her, don't tell her that I'm the one who's doing this for her. Just do this on your own behalf. But Promised Messiah was the one who was basically doing these things. I've already mentioned that Promised Messiah ﷺ had already received in the year 1883 the ilham of mamooriat, that Allah Ta'ala has now appointed him as the mujaddid of this day and age and given him a very big responsibility. But Promised Messiah ﷺ had not fully come out yet, in the sense that he hadn't fully come out into the public square and said that, okay, I am now the mujaddid of this day and age, and I am given such and such task as my primary objective. Rather, he just published the ilhamat and left it at that and kept doing what he was doing until the year 1885. Then in 1885, he received the ilhamat again, through which he was informed that now you have to put it out there. Now you have to put it out there that you are the mujaddid of this day and age. So which he did. He took out an advertisement, and this advertisement was published in good. So regarding this advertisement, I'll read this passage. हज़रत मसीह मौद अलैहिस्सलाम ने 1885 में एक इश्तिहार शाये किया, जिसका एक हिस्सा उर्दू में और एक हिस्सा अंग्रेज़ी में था। इस इश्तिहार की 20,000 कॉपियाँ तमाम दुनिया में नशर की गईं। इस इश्तिहार में हज़रत मसीह मौद अलैहिस्सलाम ने बुनियादी तौर पर यह दावा पेश किया था कि खुदा अब भी बोलता है जैसे कि पहले बोलता था, और यह कि खुदा की वही और इल्हाम का दरवाज़ा आज उम्मत मुस्लिमा पे वाह है। लिहाजा इस्लाम का खुदा जिंदा खुदा है। अगर कोई इस्लाम के सच्चा मज़हब होने का निशान चाहे तो हज़रत मसीह मौद अलैहिस्सलाम हाजिर हैं। जो चाहे आकर इस्लाम का इम्तिहान ले ले। और साथ में ये शर्त थी कि 1 साल के लिए आए, कादियान में आके रहे, हजूर खर्चा उठाएंगे। और लेकिन ये अशखास वो होने चाहिए जो किसी मज़हब की जो तहरीक है उसमें कोई नुमाया हैसियत रखते हों, नॉट एनी टॉम डिक एंड हैरी, सो दैट जब ये आएँ, क्योंकि हजूर अगर अपनी जेब से इतना भारी खर्चा उनका उठा रहे हैं, 1 साल का खर्चा उठाएंगे, खाने पीने का, रहन सहन का सारा खर्चा हजूर ने उठाना है, तो हजूर की ख्वाहिश ये थी कि फिर नामवर लोग आएँ, ताकि अगर उनमें से कोई बंदा जब निशान देख के इस्लाम कबूल करेगा तो फिर उसका असर हज़ारों लाखों के ऊपर पॉजिटिव पड़ेगा। नॉट दैट कि एनी टॉम डिक एंड हैरी स्ट्रीट से उठ के आ जाए, हाँ जी हमें निशान दिखा दो, ये मकसद नहीं था। और इसके साथ शर्त ये थी कि 1 साल रहे और खारिक आदत निशान अल्लाह ताला दिखाएगा, और वो निशान अगर खुदा ने दिखा दिया तो फिर इस्लाम कबूल करना पड़ेगा। इस शर्त के ऊपर जो चाहे इस्लाम की मौजज़ा नुमाई जो है कि गर्ज से कोई भी आ जाए कादियान 1 साल के लिए। लिहाजा सवाने फजल उमर में इसी बारे में लिखा है कि कादियान के आर्यों ने एक मैज़रनामा आपकी खिदमत में इस मजमून का पेश किया कि आप जो दूर दराज के बसने वाले मुतलाशियान हक को भी कादियान आकर निशान देखने की दावत देते हैं, तो हम जो आपके हमसाए में रहते हैं, हमें क्यों इससे महरूम रखा जाए। इस खैरात को घर से शुरू कीजिए और पहले हमें खुदा के कुर्ब और रहमत का निशान दिखाइए। About 10 or so Hindu residents of Qadian came to the Promised Messiah and said that, you're sending out this announcement, this challenge per se, in thousands. You're sending it to Europe, America, Asia, and elsewhere. You're sending it to kings and monarchs and presidents and prime ministers of countries, and you're sending it, to all the ruasa, that if they want to witness a sign of the truthfulness of Islam in this day and age, that they should come to Qadian and live here for a year. We are already residents of Qadian, and we are your neighbors. If anyone has the first right to witness such a sign, it's us. So why keep us out of this? Promised Messiah ﷺ accepted this request of theirs. And upon this, Hazrat Musleh Maud prayed to Allah Ta'ala, and then Allah Ta'ala revealed to him that you will have to go to Hoshiarpur and pray there. So Promised Messiah made the intention that he would go to Hoshiarpur, where he would be sitting in Chilla, meaning he would go in etikaf for 40 days. For 40 days he would be in etikaf, and there he would pray. And he prayed for this sign. And Allah Ta'ala, during that time frame, gave him many prophecies and revelations. But the biggest of them all was this sign which he was asking for. A sign which later on in our Jamaat is known as the sign related to Pesh Koi Musleh Maud. So on the 20th of February, Promised Messiah ﷺ, while he was in Hoshiarpur, he wrote this ishtihar, which contained this prophecy related to Musleh Maud, the promised reformer, son who would be one day called promised reformer. So he wrote it, and then he sent it to a newspaper, which was published in Amritsar on the 1st of March. And basically the sum total of that sign was that Allah Ta'ala is going to bless you with many sons and daughters, some of which will pass away in infancy, some of them will live for a very long time. Among them is going to be one who will be called Musleh Maud, and he will have certain attributes. He will become famous. His fame will reach the corners of the world. He will have a messianic personality. God will be his teacher. God will manifest many signs during this blessed son's era. And it would be as if God himself has descended. With the coming of the son, it would be as if God himself has descended on earth to show his manifest signs and whatnot. So there were 52 attributes of this son which were mentioned over time. And when Promised Messiah's announcement was published, people such as Lekram and Munshi Inderman, Muradabadi, so on and so forth, they started writing and saying, well, this is no prophecy. You're married. It's possible that, God will give you children, and some of them may be boys. So what's the big deal here? You need to specify, when will this son come? So Promised Messiah prayed again, and Allah Ta'ala informed him that the son will come within 9-year period. So from the March of 1886 till 1886 March is when Promised Messiah was having this discussion. So 9 years after that was going to be the March of 1894. So within this time frame, this promised son was going to be born. And it wasn't going to be born after this. Allah Ta'ala, through his ilham, was, as people were asking questions, Allah Ta'ala was responding through revelation. And the matter was becoming very specific. So people were receiving details about this matter. It was becoming the talk of the town. So, Promised Messiah, alayhi salatu wasalam, in his household, a daughter was born. Promised Messiah's wife, Hazrat Amma Jan, was already expecting a child at that time when this prophecy was made. And literally, I think a couple months later, when a daughter was born, Hindus went crazy. Started saying, oh, the prophecy wasn't fulfilled. Even though the Promised Messiah never said that my wife who's currently expecting, the child that she is expecting right now, is that very child. But people weren't listening. Anyways, Promised Messiah nonetheless put it in writing, put it in a newspaper. And after some time, this daughter passed away. People were again making lots of noise. Lekram made a prophecy of his own. Lekram said that Parameshwar has told me in 3 years' time, Mirza Saab's progeny will be cut off. None of his children will be alive in 3 years' time. So you can imagine when his daughter passed away, what kind of ruckus Lekram and people like him were making. Then 1887, another son is born. He was named Bashir Awal. And Promised Messiah never said that I am told by Allah the Almighty through ilham that this is the son. He just said Allah Ta'ala has informed me that a son is going to be born. Like I said, before the birth of every single child, he would receive ilham or vision through which he would prophesy that, a child is about to be born. So a son is born, and then that son dies 16, 17 months later. Again, these guys go crazy. And then Promised Messiah ﷺ takes out an announcement which is known as Sabaz Ishtihar, in which Promised Messiah ﷺ went into the details and said, I never made the statement that, the first pregnancy was that promised child or the second pregnancy was this promised child. I never made that statement. And I'm still not making this statement. He said, I am expecting another child. Allah has informed me that, these are the names for this child who's going to be born. These are the names. And then eventually, Allah Ta'ala then sent him revelation. And through that revelation, Promised Messiah ﷺ then said, okay, now Allah Ta'ala has informed me that the promised son, Musleh Maud, that I had mentioned in my announcements was the one that I had talked about in Sabaz Ishtihar, and that is my son Mahmud, Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, who later on became the second Khalifa. That's the reason why during the lifetime of Hazrat Masih Maud and during the Khilafat of Hazrat Khalifa Awal, the elders of the Jamaat, the Kibar Sahaba of Masih Maud, they all understood, they all knew that the promised reformer, the Musleh Maud, is none other than Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad. Inshallah Ta'ala, we'll cover that later. In 1885, another remarkable thing happened, and that is Promised Messiah wrote a letter to Sufi Ahmad Jan Sahib. He was a Sufi saint, and Sufi saint was going to perform Hajj in the year 1885. So Promised Messiah wrote a prayer and asked him to read out that prayer in the Sehen of Baitullah, of Khana Kaaba, in those exact words of Masih Maud Islam. And it's a very beautiful prayer. It's recorded in Tarikh Ahmadiyat Volume 1. Anyone who's interested, they can also read it from there. So Sufi Ahmad Jan Sahib, made that dua on behalf of Promised Messiah, reading his words in the Sehen of Khana Kaaba, and then afterwards in Maidan Arafat. When Sufi Sahib came back from Hajj, a couple weeks later, he fell ill and passed away. Promised Messiah ﷺ was grief-stricken after receiving this news and had his janaza ghaib offered in Qadiani. And eventually, when the first bath was to take place in the year 1889, Promised Messiah chose his house, the house of Sufi Ahmad Jan Sahib, to be the house where the first bath would take place. Then, in the year 1885, on 10th of July, a sign was shown, a miracle happened. And this is very famous in our Jamaat. It was 27th of Ramadan, and the year was 1302 Hijri, or 1885, 10th July 1885. After Fajr Namaz, the practice of Promised Messiah was that he would retire to one of the rooms and he would just rest, he would sleep if he can. So back in the days, what we call bathrooms is something different than what used to be called a bathroom in India and Pakistan back in the days. It used to be a big room, and there was no toilet in those bathrooms. It was just a room, an empty room. And people could take shower over there. They would take bucket of water over there in that room and take shower, and that's it. There was nothing else. And oftentimes people, because such rooms were very cold, and this is the month of July, peak summer month. So the room was freshly painted or whatever was done in that room. So the room was very cold. So Promised Messiah after Fajr Namaz decided to have a charpai, placed over there. And he was resting there. And he was on his left side, he was resting, and one of his servants, his follower, Maulvi Abdullah Sunori Sahab, Razila Ta'ala anhu, was massaging Hazur's feet. When he noticed that the entire body of the Promised Messiah felt a shiver, that it shivered. And he noticed that out of nowhere, a red drop appeared on the ankle of the Promised Messiah. And Hazur was still asleep. For a brief second, Hazur opened his eyes and there were tears flowing. Hazur just opened his eyes and then shut them right away. And Abdullah Snori Sahib is looking at this while massaging the feet, and he sees a red drop. First he thought it's blood, but Promised Messiah wasn't injured. And so he started looking around that maybe there might be a lizard on the wall and its tail might have gotten cut off and that's where the blood is from. But there was nothing in the room. No lizard, no nothing. So he touched it, and as soon as he touched it, the red drop sort of spread on his fingertip. He smelled it, there was no smell to it. And then he noticed that the same red drops have also appeared on the kurta, the white shirt that Promised Messiah was wearing, malmal ka kurta. It had appeared on that too. So he didn't say anything to Promised Messiah Islam. And eventually, after some moments, Promised Messiah woke up and went to Masjid Mubarak, which was right next to his residence. So there, when Hazur went over there, Abdullah Snori Sahib asked Hazur, I noticed that you were sleeping and then there was a shiver, your body shivered, and then this red drop appeared out of nowhere. Hazur avoided him, ignored him. Hazur said, it might be some mango juice or something. He said, Hazur, there was no mango juice. What are you talking about? Tell me what happened. I know something happened. Tell me what happened. So eventually, before disclosing to him what happened, Hazur started telling him that at times, for certain awliyaullah, Allah Ta'ala manifests signs. Signs which are very unique in nature. Things that belong to the other realm sometimes pass on to this realm and can manifest. Once it happened that Hazrat Musleh Maud along with Promised Messiah, they were walking. They were going for a walk, and there were some other, Sahaba with them. And Hazrat Musleh Maud asked Hazur, Abba, I think orange तो ये पता नहीं क्या इस किस्म के किसी फल का कहा या आम का कहा या नारंगी का कहा. It was not the season for a specific fruit, and they were passing near a tree, and his son Hazrat Musleh Maud asked Promised Messiah, I want the fruit. And it wasn't the season. So there was no reason for a fruit to exist on that tree. So Promised Messiah just, without looking much, he just extended his hand into the branches of the tree, and a second later he just brought his hand back and there was a fruit on that tree. And nowhere else on the tree there was any fruit. So at times Allah Ta'ala can manifest signs like these for special people that are dear to Allah Ta'ala. So anyways, Hazrat Masih Maud Islam tried explaining, and by giving few examples of some previous awliya for whom Allah Ta'ala had shown signs like these. After which he said, what happened was that I was standing in the court of Allah Ta'ala, and Allah Ta'ala appeared to me like a person, in the form of a judge, a king. And I presented a document that I had written with my own hands, on which I had written that these things are going to happen in near future, or in future. Qaza Qadar se related baat baatein thi. So when he presented that to Allah Ta'ala, with the intention that Allah Ta'ala sign off on them. So Allah Ta'ala took a pen, dipped it in a bottle filled with red ink, took it out, and then did that. When he did that, the excess red ink fell on Promised Messiah's clothing in that vision. And those red drops, even though happened to be in a vision, appeared in the physical realm on the person of Masih Maud Islam, on his kurta as well as on his ankle. So Promised Messiah Islam then asked Maulvi Abdullah Snori Sahib, you should check your clothes too. Some of it might have fallen on you as well. So Maulvi Sahib quickly checked his clothing, nothing was on it. He took off his cap. When he took off his cap, there was a red dot on his cap as well. So one dot had fallen on his cap as well. Right there and then, Maulvi Abdullah Snori Sahib requested Hazur, I request that you grant this kurta as a tabarruk to me. And Promised Messiah Islam first said, no, I fear that when I'm gone, when I'm no more, people will start worshipping this and start doing shirk. So Abdullah Snori Sahib said, there were tabarakat of Holy Prophet with Sahaba, and those tabarakat were buried with the Sahaba. So nobody could do shirk with them. Upon which Hazur said, okay, if you make the same will, then I'm willing to give you this kurta. He said, when I die, this kurta will be buried with me. On this, Hazrat Musleh Maud then granted him that kurta. If I'm not mistaken, I think the day happened to be a Friday. So when Hazur changed his clothing for Friday prayers, Hazur gave that blessed kurta to him. And once Maulvi Sanallah Amritsari made some tanqeed and said, oh, it's not possible that something like this could have happened. So Maulvi Abdullah Sanori Sahab, this I think happened after the demise of Promised Messiah Sahab. Maulvi Abdullah Sanori Sahab said, by God that this happened and I'm an eyewitness to it. And I challenge you to a mubahila, prayer duel. Sanallah Amritsari ran away. He said, no prayer duel. He said, but you can do this, come to my masjid. Come to Amritsar and go to my local masjid where I am the imam of a masjid. And there you can, on oath, present this point. So Maulvi Abdullah Sanori Sahab went with some Sahaba of Masih al-Islam or some members of the Jamaat. And then in that masjid, in front of everyone, he said, Khuda ki qasam, ye nishan meri aankhon ke samne Mirza Sahab ko Allah Ta'ala ne ata kiya. Main iska aini shahid hu. Maine apne haath se us nishan ko touch kiya hai. Or ye isse pehle Maulvi Abdullah Sanori Sahab used to hide this kurta and not show to people. But then Hazrat Musleh Maud told him, show it to as many people as you can, so that thousands of people can become witness to this great sign of Allah Ta'ala for Musleh Maud. And then he started showing it to people. But eventually when he passed away in the year 1927, the kurta was buried with him. Then 28th of November, another sign was shown for Promised Messiah Islam. This was the meteor shower. It was mentioned in the Bible as well that when the second coming of the Messiah will take place, there will be meteor shower in the sky. So this famous meteor shower happened in the year 1885. Halley's Comet had already appeared. I mentioned that in the first lecture. And when this sign was being shown, Promised Messiah would receive the following revelation again. That وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. That it is when he threw it, it was not he who threw it was Allah who threw it. The hand of God who was showing this sign. And again Allah Ta'ala would tell him that this is the sign I'm showing for your sake. I've already mentioned how some of the children passed away. In 1886, Promised Messiah entered a debate. It was a 2-day debate that took place in Hoshiarpur with a famous Arya Samaji leader by the name of Master Murli Dhar. And this debate was then published a few months later. And the name of the book is Surma Chasham Arya. This debate basically, this was a nail in the coffin of Arya Samaj. Promised Messiah dealt such a defeat to these people that it broke their back completely against Islam. Promised Messiah, when he published this book, he also published the challenge of 500 rupees. Anyone from among Arya Samaj who can write a response of this book, which was basically the debate itself. He said, anyone who can break my arguments, I'll give 500 rupees to that individual as a reward. None of the Arya Samaji leader could come up with a response and went silent. So this is where the incidents which I had brought with me for today end. Inshallah ta'ala, I'll present other incidents in tomorrow's lecture. Until then, wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Muhammadur Rasulullah.